Hey everyone, my name is Jonathan Yeong. I'm a senior developer at Shopify, and today I want to talk about the beauty of being stuck. Now, a couple of weeks ago, I found myself lost in the woods. Now, not some actual woods, I was lost in this metaphorical forest. I was in the depths of Stack Overflow, reading through pages of documentation, hoping that I would stumble upon that one piece of information that would help me find my way out. In other words, I was stuck. Now, at some point as a developer, you're going to get stuck. And I don't mean getting stuck trying to choose the right technology for a new side project. I mean getting stuck on a bug or a tough technical problem, something that stops any forward progress from being made when you're coding. And when that happens to me, I find myself going through these emotions. Oh, that's interesting. You know what? I don't think that's a problem. Let me just try this one thing. Damn it. I've tried bloody everything. All my tests are still failing. Why isn't this working? Okay, buddy, just do this for me. If this test passes, I promise I'll refactor the rest of the file. Everything is terrible. I'm such a bad developer. Screw it. I have no idea how to solve this. Clearly stuck. You know what? It's time to play some video games. Okay, so maybe this is a bit of an exaggeration, but you get the gist. Being stuck feels crummy. You could spend hours on a problem and make no progress. Not only is this frustrating, but it's also very demotivating. Thankfully, you're not alone. Getting stuck happens to everyone at all different levels. I mean, it happens to me all the time. But I want to offer a different way to think about being stuck. Instead of a disheartening, stressful experience, I'm arguing that there's some beauty in being stuck. So today, I want to talk about why being stuck is a good thing and then offer tips on how to get unstuck. So first of all, why is it good to be stuck? Well, knowing you're improving as a developer can be a hard metric to track. And that's the beauty of being stuck. It's an indicator of progress. I mean, let's look at the alternative. Let's say that you never get stuck and you know exactly what code to write, when to write it. Now, don't get me wrong, I kind of wish I had more of this. Having spurts of this is fantastic, but if this was every day, then it would get boring quickly. Either you know everything, which is impossible, there's too much to know, or you're just doing what you're good at, what you know, over and over again. And this presents problems if you're looking to improve. If you're repeatedly doing what you're good at, you might reach this point where everything becomes autonomous. You stop consciously paying attention and you cease to improve. And this is called the OK plateau. Now, I really like this term coined by Joshua Fall because it paints a picture of my journey when I was first learning Ruby on Rails. In the beginning, I struggled with the concepts and the commands. And then I got to a place where I could help, where with help, I could build a basic CRUD app. And then I finally got to a point where I could spin up this CRUD app, no problem, without any help. And that was when I hit the OK plateau. A few months back, I went through my old GitHub projects. It was a great trip down memory lane, but I realized I had started so many Ruby on Rails projects, and then I just stopped working on them. They all had one or two files, and they were all just bare bones CRUD app and nothing more. I had flashbacks where I remembered that every time I got stuck, I would run away from that feeling and just start a new project. Essentially, I was just practicing what I was good at and nothing more. It was only until I embraced getting stuck that I started to improve and to build more complex apps. Getting stuck jolts you out of this autonomous state. It's a challenge that you have to pay conscious attention to. And it's what we could think of as deliberate practice. We don't improve by practicing what we're good at. We improve by finding the edges of our knowledge and taking the leap to see what's on the other side. Joshua 4 again. When you want to get good at something, how you spend your time practicing is far more important than the amount of time you spend. Regular practice simply isn't enough. To improve, we must watch ourselves fail and learn from our mistakes. And even though failing can be a really tough pill to swallow, I argue that being stuck is a desirable difficulty It's a short-term impediment that makes for stronger learning. And that's what getting stuck is all about. It's an impediment that forces you out of your comfort zone and kicks off this chain of learning outcomes. When you're stuck, you can almost become like a scientist, testing hypotheses, seeing what works, what doesn't. And even though you might fail, you can learn from your mistakes and try again. And this process will deepen your understanding way more than if you were just doing what you were good at and never getting stuck. Ultimately, it's about having the right mindset. We need to dissociate getting stuck with our own failing and think of it as a precursor to improvement. Getting stuck should be something that we embrace rather than run away from. It's an opportunity to be curious and explore. And with this growth mindset, we can move away from the unproductive feelings of frustration, despair, and stress, and whatever else, and focus instead on how to get unstuck. Now, as you might be aware, being stuck is when you run into a snag that takes you out of a coding flow, halting any progress on your work. And in my experience, there are 3 ways you could be stuck. Each of these relating to different problems, but also fluid enough that you can move between these states at any given time. Now, the types of stuck that I'm talking about are stuck detangling knots, lost in the woods, or stuck for realsies. Now, I've given these some pretty arbitrary names, so please bear with me as I explain them. Let's first talk about detangling knots. Do you know that feeling of stuffing some wired Apple headphones into your bag and then pulling it out and it's just a bunch of knots? Well, I know that feeling way too well, hopefully not show my age too much, and it can take a really long time to detangle everything. You have to meticulously follow a thread, and you might tighten just one knot, and that makes everything else worse. And at that point, you just say screw it, and you throw the headphones back into the bag. Well, this is what it's like to be stuck on a tough bug or trying to sift through documentation to find that right piece of information. Eventually, you might just give up, and that's when you lose any forward progress. Now, to put this idea in another way, when you're stuck detangling knots, you know what the question should be, but the path to get to the answer is obscure. To get unstuck, the goal is to find the right piece of information as efficiently as possible. You want to find that one knot that undoes all the other knots. And this comes down to having the right keywords to search for. If you're running into a bug, finding the right keyword can come from carefully reading through the stack trace or through trial and error, and along with some well-placed print statements. Knowing exactly what the error is and where it's occurring can help you craft a better search term to find the answer. Another way to detangle these knots is through rubber ducking. This is when you talk through a problem with someone or something that knows nothing about it, literally to a rubber duck. Or if you're like me, I like to talk to my dog, who, let's face it, is not great at listening. When you're forced to explain something step by step, you might realize something new, or you might find a gap in your understanding. And this gap will lead to a question that will help you get unstuck. Now, if you're not stuck in a bug, you might be stuck trying to use some external library. And in this case, you might be reading through piles of documentation. Knowing when to skim versus read can make this experience less painful. Not all parts of documentation will be useful to you. So start skimming using Command or Control F, save those eyeballs for reading a little bit later, and when you hit an area that might relate to your feature, spend time reading it. Again, you're trying to find those keywords as efficiently as possible. Now, finding the balance between skimming and reading is the hard part. Too much skimming and you might miss information. Too much reading and you'll burn yourself out before ever finding the answer. As with a lot of things, it gets better with practice. Now, what if you don't know what the keywords are or what you should even be looking for? Well, this brings me to the next type of stuck, and that's being lost in the woods. You know that we need to get out of the woods, but we're not entirely sure what the destination is or even where we are currently. So to put this another way, we don't know the answer, but we also don't know the question. And this might be because we're missing concepts. Now, at this point, we should zoom out of our current problem and figure out what mental models we're missing, or even what the general area the problem is in. Let's take a Ruby example. Let's say you've done your debugging steps and you've tracked down a problem to this particular thread object. You could search for answers around the particular thread problem, but trying to find the right question to get you that answer is going to be hard. Instead, learning about the concept of concurrency will give you better understanding and help you out in the long run. And that's how we get out of the woods. We need to sit down and learn. And of course, it's not as easy as that. I kind of wish it was. Learning is hard and it can be a slow process. Thankfully, there's many resources out there. I really like books, but there's plenty of online tutorials as well that can help. These resources can teach you the terms or even how to talk about a concept. And that in itself can help immensely if you're trying to search for an answer. Also, having someone teach you a concept or pair on a problem is a really powerful way to learn. But a little more on that later. One last thing on learning. When you're consuming information about a concept, replay that information back after the fact in your own words. This could take the form of a blog post, like hint on Code Newbie, teaching someone else, or just private notes. This process of encoding information, retrieving it, and consolidation can help you understand what you just read or watched, and it forms deeper connections to help you apply that knowledge to various situations. And this is a huge benefit of learning concepts. You're not solving a specific problem, you're learning a new mental model, and you're leveling up as a developer. Now, if you're not lost in the woods and you're not stuck detangling knots, well, you might actually be stuck for realsies. And this is when you're stuck on something that's completely out of your control. Maybe your computer died, maybe you're blocked waiting on someone to give you some input, or maybe Cloudflare goes down and takes out half the internet. Remember when that happened? Well, thankfully, this doesn't happen that often. But even if you're not stuck for real, you could still be stuck and nothing you're trying is working. And this leads me to my final piece of advice. Take a break. Go for a walk, get some sleep, give yourself some time to recharge. Your brain is pretty bad at putting aside unfinished tasks, so even though you're taking a break, your brain is still processing information and making connections. And sometimes the answer just comes to you. If after you've taken a break, you still can't make any progress, ask for help. I must admit, I find this part to be the hardest. I definitely struggled for way too long on a problem before asking for help. So what's worked for me in the past has been to set time limits. So I might set, say, a 30-minute time limit, and if I can't make any progress after that 30 minutes, I will reach out to someone. There's a reason that this shouldn't be the first thing you do though. Struggling with a problem before asking for help will help prime your brain to learn and retain that incoming information. And since you've already taken some steps to get unstuck, you'll have a more focused question to ask, and you'll be able to get more out of someone who's teaching you a concept. And also find that having someone teach me something gets me further faster than if I were to just sit down and spend hours researching by myself, which is another reason why I love getting stuck. It gives me the opportunity to connect with someone from work or from the community and learn from them. Getting stuck can be a frustrating and stressful experience. But if you shift that mindset, you can transform this experience into one of curiosity and growth. Getting stuck is a desirable difficulty that can get you past that okay plateau. Then, whenever you're ready, figure out what type of stuck you are and use the tips I mentioned to get you unstuck. The next step is to conquer the world. That's it for me. Thanks so much everyone for listening. I've included some extra links and resources in the slides. You can find me on Twitter at Yeong, and I'm also here on Code Newbie at Yeong as well. And if you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the thread of the CodeLand post for this talk. Thank you so much for listening, friends. Bye.